The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome back to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and this week it's all me. I don't have a special guest, but we're celebrating something fun. This is the 8th year anniversary of Real Reviews. Started off 8 years ago with Mike and I talking about brick mansions, and here we are 8 years later. It's just me, but I'm here to give you a bunch of fun movies to talk about, maybe some that interest you. And we'll have a good time and have a fun movie conversation. So this week, I'm going to get us started with the film that we have on the marquee this week. It's a film called Memory from director Martin Campbell. This is a film that stars Liam Neeson as a man named Alex Lewis. He is an aged contract killer who is suffering from early Alzheimer's. He tries to retire from being a hitman, but of course he's given one last job. It involves killing a man and his 13-year-old daughter, but he refuses to kill children. Because he's a killer with a conscience, he decides to hunt down everyone who was part of ordering him to kill a child. Meanwhile, you have FBI agent Vincent Serra, who's played by Guy Pearce, and his team. They get in on the action as they begin tracking this killer from his trail of bodies. They discover that he's uncovered, that everyone that he's after lead to a child sex trafficking ring that is headed by a lady, Devonna Sulman, who's played by Monica Bellucci. She is kind of the head of this organized crime and child sex trafficking ring. It involves a lot of wealthy, well-connected people, and Detective Serra he kind of has a soft spot for this hitman, Alex Lewis. This hitman turned vigilante, and he decides that maybe he can help them. But the big question is, can they all finish the job before his memory from Alzheimer's has totally disappeared on him? This is the plot of your new Liam Neeson movie. Ironically, for a movie called Memory, this film is very forgettable. It's a film, I mean, you've seen this film dozens of times, and most of them have been starring Liam Neeson. The guy who wants to get out, but he can't. He's on a revenge kick trying to take down the people who have harmed a child. This is the Liam Neeson basic paint by numbers story. It's really incredibly derivative. He's, in fact, derivative to the point where at one point, because he is losing his memory from Alzheimer's, he begins writing things that he needs to remember about himself. He begins writing them on his arm before he starts to forget them. This is in a movie that also co-stars Guy Pearce, and the movie basically tells you, hey, remember Memento? We're going to do exactly the same thing, and it's kind of insulting to an audience. You also, they play up this Alzheimer's where some moments he can't remember anything. He's losing his memory, and then the next minute his mind is super sharp, especially when he's needed, when he has to kill someone. Then he's fine, he's sharp. But when they need him to appear vulnerable or weak, suddenly the Alzheimer's is kicking in. Or basically anytime they need him to not be invincible, then they say, oh, the Alzheimer's is the reason why this is happening. It feels kind of lazy to me. One of the things that kind of drove me nuts with this movie is, years ago now, Taken was kind of it started this nonsense stretch of action movies for Liam Neeson's career. Started him off on this kick of being the real badass who's taking revenge on everybody. And Taken was a really good film. And it balanced the revenge action aspect with the horrors of sex trafficking in that movie. And that's what kind of helped make that movie really indelible. And then this film kind of uses the idea of sex trafficking with children. It's kind of a lazy plot point, a plot device, and really nothing more. It felt really cheap to use that in this movie as just kind of a throwaway reason to go after somebody. Again, just really derivative of everything else that Liam Neeson has done before. And like every other Liam Neeson film, of course, he's basically a ghost who can get in and out of places without people seeing him. Despite being a man in his 70s, he's able to slip in and out of situations and then kill basically anyone because he always has a particular set of skills. And you also have some hilarious American accents. You have Liam Neeson. You have Guy Pearce, who I believe is Australian. You have Ray Stevenson, who plays another detective. He is, I believe, also Australian. And they're all trying to do Texas accents. And there's one moment where Liam Neeson's character calls Guy Pearce's character on the phone and kind of taunting the detective at first with a phone call. And when Guy Pearce hangs up the phone, one of his fellow detectives says, "Well, what do you know about him?" He goes, "Well, I know one thing for sure. He's definitely American." And I audibly laughed out loud because these are all terrible Texan accents that people are trying to pull off in this movie. And so, unfortunately, I couldn't find a whole lot that was really redeeming about this. Memory is, again, an unmemorable film. I ended up giving it 1.5 out of 5 stars. I don't recommend you wasting your time with this. You could really watch anything Liam Neeson has done in the last 10 years and just consider that you saw Memory because it's the exact same movie. Moving forward, though, with stuff that we have on the streaming spotlight this week, I want to talk to you about a film called After Yang. After Yang is a movie made by A24. I believe in 2020, it was on my list of most anticipated movies of that year. Of course, due to multiple reasons, the film didn't come out until just recently. And so it is directed by Kogonada, who is a filmmaker who also did a film called Columbus a few years ago, which was really below the radar, interesting. This is a film that is set in the near future. It's Jake and Kyra are a couple played by Colin Farrell and Jodie Turner-Smith. They have an adopted daughter Mika, and they also have a son, I guess, Yang. Yang is a humanoid companion robot that they bought refurbished from a reseller. Their adopted daughter Mika is Asian, so they thought that purchasing this Asian techno-sapien, as they're called, would kind of help her connect to her heritage. And early in the movie, Yang goes unresponsive, and Jake makes it his mission to try and fix him because this is very important to his daughter. It's basically her brother. And so it's Jake's mission to kind of try and repair this robot because Yang and Mika had this special relationship. So as Jake starts kind of digging into repairing Yang, he discovers that they don't know everything about Yang, that there was a lot about this Yang that they didn't know going in. They thought when they bought him that he was basically like new, refurbished, memory wiped, one previous owner. And as they start to dig into him, they find out that he has a memory bank, and it's been stored for his lifetime. And it's stored with 3-second clips that he recorded of their family, but also things outside of their family that they had no idea about. The fact that he spent time with a woman named Ada, played by Haley Lou Richardson, and that he had a relationship with Ada. And Jake and his wife Kira both, it raises an interesting question because they thought they knew this was their child. This was who they basically brought in to watch their daughter, to be the sibling that they couldn't provide to her. And there's a lot that they don't know about this person suddenly. And the more clips that Jake starts to see, the more he realizes some really heartbreaking things about Yang. And it really presents the questions of, what would you do? What would, if you could see your loved one's memories? This is kind of the question that I took away. If you could see your loved one's memories after they're gone, would you want to? Because in some moments, it's really comforting. He's able to sit there and watch over these 3-second clips and kind of get reconnected to Yang in that way. But then there's also a lot of things that you might see that might change the way you thought about that person. And that's kind of presented in here too. And it kind of an interesting conundrum. And I don't want to get into some of the things that happen in this film because it's a really interesting film. It's told really beautifully. It's interesting because it opens with this really strange opening sequence of all the characters that you're going to see in this movie all dancing to this weird techno song, and it kind of gives off a vibe. But then the rest of the film is really a very quiet sci-fi film. It's really complicated, contemplative, nuanced, and it kind of really demands that you pay attention to what's going on and constantly. The film feels like it's walking a tightrope to me of being patient and delicate with the message that Kogonada is trying to deliver to you versus kind of pushing things forward a little more and losing all the nuance that's been built up in this film. And I think that's the strength of Kogonada as a filmmaker. I mentioned his previous film, Columbus, did the same thing. That film also starred Haley Lu Richardson, and it was this small personal story that was told without big effects, without action, but it really gets you invested in these people that are involved in the story and their personal journey, and then pays it off really well at the end. This is the exact same way. Colin Farrell in this movie was tremendous. It really hits all the right notes every time in this movie. Might be one of my favorite performances he's ever had. It often feels like he's not doing a whole lot because it is a quiet film, but the build of the slow building of blocks with his character really pays off in the end. You really start to care for him and adds up to a great performance. Haley Lu Richardson too. She's great in this film in a smaller role, but I think she's really one of our strongest young actresses who every time I see her in something, I'm always impressed. She always delivers something interesting, and I think she was great in this. Jodie Turner-Smith is the wife, Kira. I really enjoy. She gives you just enough. She's kind of in the background for a lot of this movie. She's enjoyable enough, and the dichotomy between her and her husband has just enough to make it feel real. But I really enjoyed this movie. Again, it's shot beautifully. It's one that I'd been looking forward to quite a bit, and it delivered well. It's another great A24 sci-fi odd film from another interesting director, and I found it streaming over on, I believe Showtime is where I located it this week, and I highly recommend it. So if you are interested at all in After Yang, I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. One of the better films I've seen this year, and a great Colin Farrell performance for sure. So let's move ahead with another streaming spotlight that I have. This one is called The Survivor. This was over on HBO Max from director Barry Levinson. And this stars Ben Foster as Harry Haft. You see him right there? Harry Haft is a boxer. He's a Polish Jew who survived Auschwitz and then went on to become a boxer in America. Ultimately, he ended up challenging Rocky Marciano, one of the great heavyweight champions of all time. But the real story for this movie, we see here in this trailer, is how he survived Auschwitz and what he lost along the way. The film cuts back and forth from the post-war version of Harry, with Ben Foster under kind of heavy prosthetics. At this point, he's got his mind set on becoming a famous boxer. The reason he wants to become a famous boxer is he wants to get his name in the papers, get his story told, in hopes that the love that he lost in Auschwitz will see it, and they can reconnect. That she will come and find him. It cuts back and forth again to his memories of the concentration camp. Those memories are all shot in black and white, and there, an emaciated-looking Ben Foster was a prisoner in Auschwitz who was used in this thing that the Nazi officers had in the concentration camps for their entertainment and gambling purposes, where they would pit the Jews against each other in fights to the death. And they would, gladiator games basically, where they would pit them against each other, gamble on them, and really the winner was the one who was still alive at the end. And Harry Haft was taken in by a Nazi officer, an SS officer played by Billy Magnuson in this movie, who really kind of sees him as his guy. I'm going to win a bunch of money off you. I'll give you special favors. You just need to keep winning. And that's how he survived. Harry survived by basically killing his fellow Jewish prisoners, including some who were very close to him. And that's how he was able to keep living another day in Auschwitz. And the film is him really spending a lifetime trying to reconcile that. And it leads to a lot of anger, a lot of hurt along the way. Again, like I said, he also lost the woman he loved in camp. He's pretty sure she survived. But after the war, he married a new woman played by Vicky Krieps. He married a lady, Miriam. They have a child together. And he was cold and he was distant towards them. He wasn't the kindest man, and you see why. And he's really solely focused on finding his first love, who he lost in that camp. And you have a lot of other great actors in here. Danny DeVito as Rocky Marciano's trainer, who sees a little something in this guy. You also have John Leguizamo as Harry's trainer. And then Peter Sarsgaard is a newspaper man who gets this story from Harry and publicizes it. And there's another relationship similar to relationships he had in the camp with the SS officer, where you can't tell if he's being used, if this newspaper man is using him for his own purpose, for his own personal gain, or if it's to help him. And there's a lot of distrust in there as well. And Ben Foster is one of my favorite actors. He's great. He's usually, a second or third guy in a film, but he's also the star of one of my favorite films, Leave No Trace, a few years ago. Another kind of quiet, personal film about a man suffering tragedy from war. In this film, he's buried under a lot of prosthetics, especially in the older years in the post-war era. He's buried under a bunch of prosthetics. And he does his best with this story. Really physical role for him. Much like in Raging Bull, he kind of echoed De Niro's style, where to play the boxer, he put on some weight. And to play the emaciated Jewish prisoner, he lost 60 pounds. And just looks emaciated. And it's tough. He's great in that. And the film is rocky at points, and that's no pun intended for the boxing metaphor, but it felt a little too long in parts. It kind of dragged. It was interesting to see Barry Levinson, who's a great filmmaker, really kind of echo previous films. Like I said, there was a lot of, in the post-war sequence with his anger and such, there was a lot of Raging Bull that came out to me. And then with his use of the black and white in the Auschwitz era, it really echoed Spielberg's Schindler's List, obviously. And kind of the back and forth between the black and white and the color with that really kind of evoked a lot of that. There's a great ensemble cast around him. I really enjoyed Vicky Krieps in this role. She's a woman who knows that she wasn't his first love, wasn't his first choice. And there's some incredibly tough moments in here. And basically, she just wants her son to not be completely ostracized by his father. And she's kind of willing to accept that I know I'm not your first choice. And there's some really, really tough moments. And Ben Foster's wonderful. And I think it's a really good movie that I think could have been great. It's just a little long and a little uneven in a couple of points, but I still give it a recommend. I give The Survivor 3.5 stars. It's over on HBO Max. There's a lot of movies called The Survivor, I found, as I was trying to pull this up and find it. So make sure you're watching the right one. It's the 2022 version starring Ben Foster, but I do recommend going to check that out. The last film that I have for you this week is a film that's not even out yet. It's a film that I saw during the Wisconsin Film Festival a few weeks ago. It's a film that will actually be coming out in August. August 12th it's due to come out, but I just wanted to give you a little talk, maybe something to look forward to. And so I'm talking about a film called Emily the Criminal. Emily the Criminal is a film directed by John Patton Ford. Stars Aubrey Plaza. See, we don't have a trailer because they don't even have a trailer out yet for this movie, but trust me, it's a movie. I saw it. Stars Aubrey Plaza as the titular Emily. Emily is a young adult who is struggling under the crushing weight of student loan debt and really not able to find any work that will help her pay down that student loan debt. She's getting desperate. She's working in, I believe it's New York City. She's working for a caterer, not making a lot of money, just kind of delivering the food to people. She also has a past criminal indiscretion, mixed with she has a real no BS attitude that is making her ability to find other work really difficult. And it's a situation that's facing a lot of people. A lot of people in this country with a debt that they can't pay and a job, the inability to find a job that could really help pay that debt. You have a degree in something that isn't going to pay that debt down. It's a real problem, and this movie kind of addresses that. Emily, as a character, is a really street smart lady, which pays off when a new opportunity presents itself. When one of her coworkers gives her a phone number and says, "Call this guy. There's some quick money involved in it. Don't ask any questions. Just call and he'll take you in." So she gives this call. There's a promise of a quick payday. She shows up at this facility where she is met by a guy named Yusuf, who is played by Theo Rossi. And she really has no idea what's going to happen. Yusuf is this quiet, kind of charming guy. He has the promise of a quick payday for her, and that's really all she's interested in. And he doesn't tell her a whole lot. He basically just says, "Here's a credit card. I need you to go into a store, buy a big screen TV, bring it here. That's your first test. If you do that, I'll give you $900. Or I can't remember what it was. But yeah, here's a quick payday for you." She's like, "Well, there's got to be a hang up." "No, trust me, just do it. Bring it here." And she realizes, wow, this is pretty easy. And soon it gets bigger and bigger. And Emily starts to realize that she can also kind of make more and more money until she realizes, wait a minute, maybe there's another game that I can play within this system. And I don't want to tell you a whole lot more because the movie is a few months out still. But it's a really interesting film. It's basically just the two of these characters, Emily and Yusuf, kind of maneuvering the world of these underground criminals. They have a really interesting chemistry. I really enjoy their chemistry. You know that both of them are ripping people off. You know that they're criminals. You know that they're doing bad things. It's hard because they're presented in a way that you're supposed to feel sympathetic and kind of root for them to pull off these scams. And Emily is, she's sympathetic because of her situation that we've been presented with her with. She's kind of a surrogate for everyone who's living under crushing debt. And Aubrey Plaza is really good in this role. And she can also play her unsympathetic at points. She can play her really cold and really kind of evil. She's been through a lot. She's got this strong rebellious streak to her, and so she seems really self-confident, which also makes scenes where she is scared really effective. And so that's really enjoyable. Yusuf is a character who they give a lot of backstory to. That actually really makes him sympathetic to me as well, as he kind of mentors Emily, and they grow closer. You really want them to work out. And it's a film that really kind of works as a heist thriller with a social commentary to it. And I was kind of surprised by it. Aubrey Plaza, who, we see her in things like Park and Rec, and she's been in some not great movies recently, Dirty Grandpa. I mean, not a great film career, but she was really good in this. I really enjoyed Emily the Criminal. And I believe I said this comes out August 12th. It should be coming to theaters or streaming platforms near you. But I recommend it. Maybe one to put on your list to take a look for when it does come out. So I give Emily the Criminal 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, good heist movie. I'm a sucker for good heist movies, and this wasn't your prototypical Ocean's 11 type heist, but it was a fun one nonetheless. So let's move ahead, though. Talking about movies that are coming out in the future, we're getting into the big summer blockbuster season. We're starting to get ramped up. Next, let's see, coming soon, May 13th. Things are gonna get hot, that's for sure. We have in theaters and also over on Peacock, we have a film called Firestarter. This is a remake of the 1984 film that starred Drew Barrymore as a young girl with pyrokinetic powers. This is a remake based on a Stephen King's novel, I believe. This is a young girl played by Kira Armstrong who is struggling to control her pyrokinetic powers. It also stars Zac Efron, so that should be fun. Check that out. We also have over on Netflix the weekend of May 13th, we have Senior Year, which is a film about a lady named Stephanie who's in high school. She's the head cheerleader. She is, the most popular girl until one day she's at the top of that cheerleader pyramid. I know how it is. I've been up there as well. You get a little dizzy. She falls off the top of that pyramid, lands right on her head, and she is in a coma for 20 years. She awakes 20 years later at the age of 37 and decides it's time to get back to business, get back to high school, and become the head cheerleader again, and also the prom queen at the age of 37. Stephanie is played by Rebel Wilson. So check that out, coming on Netflix May 13th. And then the last film that we have coming out that weekend, I believe is also a Netflix film. It's called Operation Mincemeat. Stars Colin Firth. It's telling the story of two British intelligence officers in World War II who used corpses and false papers to outwit the German military. I don't know the story. I hear that it's a true story, and I'm kind of interested in it. And it kind of feels like anytime you need a movie about a British intelligence officer in World War II, that they always turn to Colin Firth. But those are all the films coming out the weekend of May 13th. Before we go any further, though, I want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, the Palace here in Sun Prairie. We always appreciate a nice dream lounger. As I said, it's summer movie season right upon us. The kids are getting out of school soon, and the first big Marvel movie of the year is coming out this week, and the theaters are getting full, and it's great to see. So we always encourage you to go grab some popcorn and watch a movie, and then you can watch this show with me, join along, and let me know what you think of our opinions on these films. Next week, it's going to be a fun week. As I said, we have a new Marvel movie. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a film that we're going to be talking about next week. I'm very excited for that. We also have a film called The Takedown, which is a French buddy cop film. And then we have a Finnish horror movie coming out of Finland called The Hatching that I'm going to be talking about next week. I'm going to be joined by my good friend, Mr. Dan Presser. You know him from the Sun Prairie News and from previous episodes on here. So that will be a good time. Again, if you want to keep in touch with this show, let us know what you think. You have some ideas for some movies we need to watch, anything that you want to chat with. You can always find us on social media. We're over on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. Real Reviews KSUN, Real Reviews KSUN is the easiest way to find us over there. And we love chatting with folks. I have a good time. I wake up usually every morning. There's a message from somebody on the Facebook page either agreeing or vehemently disagreeing with something I had to say about a movie. And I enjoy it. So check us out over there. And I want to thank all of you who have stuck with us and joined us for the last 8 years of this show. And those, maybe you just joined us, welcome. And hopefully we can continue to bring you some interesting and maybe knowledgeable movie reviews in the upcoming future. But again, thanks for checking us out. So until next week, when it's me and Dan Presser, I'm Jamison, and thanks for watching.